Some objects are more than just things. Behind glass, in dusty attics, or sometimes just sitting in plain sight. There are items that carry something darker than their appearance. Cursed dolls, paintings that bring misfortune, a reflection in the mirror of someone who is covered in blood, and boxes that whisper with the voices of the dead. For this video we will open the doors to the world of the haunted objects. And after you watch this, well, perhaps you will look differently to the objects that surround you in your house. Because, who knows, they might be cursed as well. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. And this is already my third video for the spooky season. Yay, I'm super excited once again. I am truly loving it and I hope you are loving it as well. I still have 2 videos left after this one. So if you don't want to miss it, please subscribe to my channel. And this is also the last video I'm recording before I will turn 31. So I'm also enjoying my final video of being 30. For this video we will take a closer look to objects that we believe are haunted. And some of them might even sound familiar to you because these objects have inspired many movies and other media stories. Chucky, Annabelle, The Conjuring, Bloody Mary and Possession all left their mark in the horror genre on the silver screen. But what is the real story behind these objects? What impact did they have on the people who encountered them to become such an inspiration for the movies that are made to scare us? I will take a closer look to the most notable objects and I will give you the true story behind the nightmares that you have seen on your television. Let's begin. We will begin with one of the most notable and most famous objects, which is the doll Annabelle. And that name sounds very sweet, but that was nothing further from the truth. The doll was a Raggedy Ann doll. A doll with red yarn for hair and a triangle nose. They were very popular during the late 1910s. And you're probably wondering, well, the Annabelle doll in the movie doesn't look like that. That's true, it's a different doll. There she is shown as a more traditional doll, but of course with a sinister look. Eventually the doll came in the possession of Ed and Lorraine Warren, a couple who were paranormal investigators. And their names might sound familiar to you because they are 2 of the main characters in the Conjuring universe. They became very famous for investigating some of the most notorious hauntings in the world, including this doll. And the doll was given to them by a 28-year-old nurse student who was named Donna. She lived in Hartford, Connecticut. She received the doll from her mother and her mother had bought the doll in an antique store. At first the doll seemed normal, but eventually Donna and her roommate started to notice that the doll would appear on places where they didn't put her. She would move and take strange positions. She would sit upright, her legs would be crossed or she would hang somewhere. Of course this creeped the girls out, but there was a possibility that someone was just playing pranks on them. They lived in a house full of students, so a prank here or there wasn't out of the ordinary. Things would escalate quickly, because one day Donna found a note with help on it, or in some stories even several notes. And she found these notes, or the note, in her apartment. And one night when Donna returned to her apartment, Annabelle had moved again. Which was almost a daily thing, but this time it was a little bit different. Annabelle was not only repositioned, but she was also covered in a red substance. And this freaked Donna out more than it normally did, so she finally decided to contact a medium. When the medium arrived, she immediately knew what was going on. She told Donna and her roommate that the doll was inhabited by the spirit of someone who had died in their building. And this person didn't die of natural causes, no. And this person was killed by someone. This person was a 6-year-old girl. And her name was, as you already probably guessed, Annabelle. One night when one of Donna's friends named Lou came to hang out in her apartment, he voiced his concerns about the doll. He told her that he thought that the medium didn't tell everything she knew about the doll and that she withheld some information. And the story goes that Annabelle wasn't really thrilled with Lou being so nosy. So one night when Lou was investigating the doll, she decided to kill him. So on a night when Lou was investigating the noises in the apartment of Donna, Annabelle decided to hunt him down and kill him. And of course, this was the final straw and Donna decided to get rid of the doll. She went to a priest and asked him for advice, and he advised her to bring the doll to the Warrens. And when the Warrens investigated the doll, they came to the same conclusion. The doll was possessed by a demon. The Warrens publicized various claims about the doll. They claimed that the doll inflicted psychic slashes that could draw blood from victims, that it had caused the priest who had insulted the doll to run his car into a tree, and that the doll stabbed a homicide detective who was unable to work after the attack and had to resign. The Warrens tried to perform exorcism on the doll, but this failed. They were forced to look for another solution before this doll would cause more victims. They decided to place the doll in a glass box so that the doll was unable to move. They relocated the box to their occult museum in Monroe, Connecticut in the 1970s. In this museum they displayed more haunted objects. The museum was open to the public till 2019. This year, in 2025, there were reports that the doll had gone missing. It turned out that this was a part of a marketing campaign to promote a tour called Devils on the Run. This tour showcased artifacts of the Warrens Occult Museum to several locations in America, so that paranormal enthusiasts were able to see Annabelle and other famous artifacts for themselves. So Annabelle was free again, at least for a short period. And if you think that nothing happened, you are mistaken. The tour organizer and host, Dan Rivera, died this July, and he produced TikTok videos about Annabelle the doll. Was this a coincidence? Or was it Annabelle's revenge? I guess we will never know. But we can agree upon one thing, that this was of course a very strange situation. This year it was announced that the museum will reopen and that you could spend a night inside it. If you pay enough money, of course. Annabelle has been placed back inside her glass box and in the museum. And there she is still waiting, sealed inside her glass prison, watched over by her guardians, who are waiting to unleash her story on the world once again. The next story is the story about the woman in the mirror. She was someone that I was truly afraid of when I was a child, and I still have a bit of a fear when I have to look inside a mirror after 12 at midnight. But she also intrigued me, and believe me when I say that I have tried this myself with my friends. But I guess that she didn't want us as her victims. Thank God. This is the story of Bloody Mary. It was, or even is, not difficult to summon her. You have to stand in front of a mirror, preferable with burning candles and in a dark room. And you need to chant her name 3 times. And in some stories you could only do that at 12 at midnight. Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, and there she was, looking to you in the mirror and standing right behind you, covered in blood, without any expressions on her face. And it was her choice what she would do to you. Her actions could vary, She could only whisper in your ear, which is of course quite harmless, or she could appear and disappear as fast as she came. But in some cases she could scratch you or even injure you, take over your soul, trap you inside a mirror for all eternity, or even worse, she could end your life. But where did this story come from? Who was Mary? There are several historical figures with the name Mary who have been put forward as candidates. One of them, Mary I of England, was the daughter of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. While she ruled, she had burned around 300 religious Protestant dissenters because she was a very devoted Catholic. And this earned her the name Bloody Mary. Another Mary, Mary Worth, was a woman who had killed slaves who tried to escape via the Underground Railroad in order to escape their life in slavery in America, and she was also considered to be the Bloody Mary who would appear in the mirror, forever looking for more victims. There was also a Mary who was burned during the witch trials in the beginning of the modern period. And since they believed that she was a witch, it is possible that she is still able to hunt us via the mirror. But the most complete story is the story of Mary who lived in the 1800s, and the place where she lived was dealing with a terrible disease. The people who got sick had no chance to get better. Shortly after they got the disease, they dropped dead, or at least that is what they thought. The physicians couldn't find a pulse, and when they placed a mirror under their nose, the glass would not condensate. But even if they believed that these people were dead, in some cases it happened that they were mistaken. And often it was too late. The person who they thought had died would be buried inside a casket and eventually die by the lack of oxygen. But luckily they came up with a solution. They would place a small hole inside of the coffin, and then they would put a piece of string through the hole, and that string was attached to a bell. They would bury the person close to their house so that if they were alive and they would ring the bell, the relatives would know that the person they loved was still alive. They could dig the person up and an unnecessary death would be prevented. Eventually, Mary caught the disease as well. She was bedridden and slowly dying. When she was also losing her pulse, and when she had a lack of condensation, they decided to bury her as well. She was placed in a coffin like all the others. Her hand was holding the string, and that string was also attached to a bell. But Mary wasn't buried yet because her parents couldn't find the strength to do so. They hoped that she would return to them, and it was easier for them to open the coffin inside the house instead of under the ground. But weeks had passed and no bell had been rung yet. Her parents were still praying that their precious Mary would return to them. But their friends were very skeptical. They told them that they should leave the house and come with them. Mary's parents hesitated but eventually decided to join them. When Mary's parents were leaving the house, the neighbor decided to pay a visit to Mary. The neighbor decided that it was time to bury Mary because hoping that she would return was useless. He placed the coffin inside the grave, but he still placed the string inside Mary's hand. He didn't want to be responsible for the death of Mary when she wasn't able to ring the bell. After that he filled her grave and he told her that he was sorry. He returned home and never told a soul what he did. But a miracle happened because Mary woke up, and when she woke up she saw the string inside her hand. She started pulling and the bell was ringing, but nobody could hear it because nobody was near. Her parents were still with their friends and her neighbor was already too far away. Mary became very desperate and she started to pull the string even harder. Eventually, she pulled the string too hard and the bell fell from its stick. The hole inside the coffin didn't provide enough oxygen, so Mary started to have trouble breathing. She tried to break free by scratching and crawling at the wooden casket. She scratched so hard that her hands started to bleed and the blood started dripping all over her face. But unfortunately, Mary wasn't able to escape from her casket. She lost all her oxygen and she drew her final breath. This time there was no doubt about it. Mary was truly dead. When Mary's parents came home, they were shocked to see that the casket was removed. They walked towards their yard and they noticed a fallen stick and a bell on the ground. They followed the string and there they saw that the casket was buried. They immediately started digging and opened up the casket. They started screaming and crying when they saw their daughter covered in blood inside the casket. Of course, this was a sign that Mary was alive and tried to free herself. Her white dress was ruined by the red stains and her hands looked almost animal-like because of the scratching. But they still wanted to make sure that she had truly died, so once again they placed a mirror under her nose. Her pulse was gone, but there was still condensation on the mirror. Mary had died, but her spirit had moved inside the mirror. Now she was stuck in there for eternity. Forever in her white dress covered in blood to haunt everyone who would dare to speak her name 3 times. Then she would scratch her victims' faces just the way that she tried to scratch herself to freedom. She had traded her wooden prison for a mirror. But is this story about Mary just a story to scare children? Some people insist that they have seen her inside their mirror, that she is waiting beyond their reflection to inflict the misery that she had endured. There is only one question that remains. Would you dare to try it yourself? Next up is an antique wine cabinet that would be known as the Dybbuk box, or in Hebrew, Kufsat Dybbuk. At first it was just a wine cabinet, but soon people would discover that this wine cabinet was haunted by a Dybbuk. I had never heard about a Dybbuk, but it comes from Jewish mythology. The name comes from the Hebrew word Dybbuk, which means a case of attachment. The Dybbuk tended to be a male spirit because the souls of women did not participate in Gigul, which was a concept of reincarnation. In some cases the Dybbuk possessed women, especially on the eve of their weddings, but they preferred to possess men. Although they could possess living beings, they preferred the dead. They would take over their bodies and cause misfortune. And when their goal was reached, they would look for another victim. You could try exorcism on them, which could work, but not in all the cases. The story of the Dybbuk box started in 2001 or 2003. I tried to find the specific year, but I wasn't able to see which year was the one that most people agreed upon. An antique dealer from Portland, Oregon named Kevin Manis bought a small wine cabinet from a yard sale. The wine box allegedly came from a Holocaust survivor who warned him to never open the cabinet because it contained a Dybbuk. Kevin didn't thought much of it. He was only happy that he was able to buy such a beautiful wine cabinet. He took it home and placed it inside his house. But on that same night, he started to experience horrible nightmares. Not only did these nightmares scare him, but his house decided to live a life of its own. The lights started to flicker, and a strange odor was spreading throughout the house. It smelled like cat urine and jasmine flowers. He started to get cold chills and his hair fell out in chunks. In his dreams he saw an old hag who was trying to hurt him. The next day, Kevin decided that he didn't want to have the box or cabinet anymore. He decided to give the box to his mother. which really confuses me. Unless you hate your mother, I can't find a reason why you would give a cursed object to your mother. And on that same day, his mother got a stroke. So giving it to his mother wasn't the best choice. Therefore, he decided to inflict misery on others and put the box on eBay. But at least he was honest, because instead of writing a beautiful description of the box, he decided to write the truth. He wrote a chilling description of all the things that had happened after he had bought the box. The story fueled the modern haunted object craze, and his post went viral. People who loved paranormal objects thought that this object was the jackpot. Nothing like this was ever sold online. They became obsessed with the object, but perhaps also a little bit terrified. Eventually the box was sold to a man named Jason Hexon. And it would not take long before Jason would also experience the wrath of the box. He was also getting nightmares, and he dreamt about the same hag. And when he tried to touch the box would turn into a liquid substance. Eventually he felt a knife inside him in a certain area, and he was paralyzed by the pain. He had paid $280 for the box, but he didn't buy it because of the scary description. And therefore he decided to open it up. He found a goblet, 2 locks of hair tied with a string, pennies from the 1920s, a dyed rosebud, a cast iron candlestick holder, and a grenade statue engraved with Hebrew letters. He wanted to keep the box, but the longer he got it, the more ill he became. He decided to seek the advice of a rabbi, and he placed the box in a gold-lined wooden container. I don't know how, but eventually the box was sold once again. And it would be sold many times, and all the people who owned the box would experience horrible things. People claimed that their homes burned down, that they lost all their hair, or that they would lose all their money. Eventually a quote by Kevin Manis was placed online in the hope that people would stop spreading misinformation about the box. But this did not help, because many paranormal investigators wanted to investigate the box even more. Kevin denied that this quote came from him, and he kept saying that everything that had happened to him was the truth. Therefore, the box remained a very famous and popular cursed object. Movies used it as inspiration, and many stories were written about the Dybbuk box. And somewhere around 2021, Kevin finally admitted that the stories he told about the box were all fake. But that did not matter, because there are still people who believe that the box is cursed, even 4 years later. Eventually the final owner sealed the box and gifted it to Zach Bagans, who is a TV host of the TV show Ghost Adventures. He runs a haunted museum in downtown Las Vegas. He placed the Dybbuk box there. There's one story that includes a famous person, and that person is Post Malone. Post Malone is a famous singer, and he was visiting the museum with Zach. Zach decided to remove the plexiglass that was covering the box. And when Zach was touching the box, Post Malone touched Zach's shoulder. And this was probably enough to curse Post Malone. The following months, Post Malone would experience several severe things. First, his private plane had to make an emergency landing after one of his tires blew off, which is of course already scary enough. But after that happened, 3 armed robbers targeted his house in San Fernando Valley. And to make matters even more serious, Post Malone's Rolls Royce was in a serious car crash. Of course, his fans, who knew that he had visited the Dybbuk box, believed that he was cursed by this object. And if you want to see the box for yourself, it is still broadcasted in this museum. But be warned, because you never know if the spirit of the box will possess you. So these are some of the most famous stories that all happened in America, But let's take a look at Britain. And this particular story is funny because when I was investigating this story, I realized that my neighbors owned this painting as well. And this story is about the Crying Boy painting, a mass-produced print of a painting by an Italian painter named Giovanni Bragolin. It started to be distributed from the 1950s. For 25 years it was just a painting hanging in several houses, but its reputation started to change on September the 5th, 1985. A firefighter from Essex claimed that he often found undamaged copies of this painting in the ruins of burnt houses. And if the whole house had burned down, and this is the only thing that is left, it's of course a very interesting story. And therefore the British tabloid The Sun made an article about it, and a few months later many people started to believe that the painting was cursed. They believed that the painting would cause fires if you hang it inside your house. Therefore The Sun decided to organize mass bonfires when these paintings that the readers had sent were burned. But why was this painting cursed? Some legends claim that the boy in the picture was an orphan who had died in a fire. His spirit was trapped inside the artwork and therefore it caused misfortune. The firefighters refused to keep the painting in their homes. And I guess my neighbors didn't know the story when they bought their painting. And luckily for them, their house never burned down. But feel free to buy one for yourself and see what it does, if you dare. We'll stay in Britain for the next story. This time it's about a chair from English folklore. It's about the Busby Stoop chair, or also known as Dead Man's Chair. According to the legend, a British murderer who was named Thomas Busby had cursed the chair just before he was executed in North Yorkshire in the United Kingdom. He had killed his father-in-law for an unknown reason. We also don't know why he had cursed the chair. But ever since that fateful day, the chair was a death sentence. Whoever would sit in the chair would die immediately or would befall misfortune. Many years passed and many people died by sitting in the chair. It had taken too many victims, so the chair was sold to the Thirsk Museum. There it would become a major attraction. But they were smart because they placed the chair high above the ground so that nobody could sit in it and activate the curse. Of course, many ghost hunters and paranormal researchers have visited the museum, but they haven't dared to sit inside the chair as of yet. For the next story, we will cross the channel to France, where a legendary diamond is believed to be cursed. In French, it is known as Le Bijou du Roi, which translates to the King's Jewel, or Le Bleu de France, which translates to France's Blue, and lastly the Tavernier Blue. But you might know it as the Hope Diamond. And I will keep calling it the Hope Diamond because that's easier. The diamond has a unique color. It's deep blue and it weighs 45.52 carats. But wearing it isn't something I would recommend because it is believed to be very much cursed. The story starts with a man named Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, and he was a 17th century French merchant who traded gems. The story goes that Jean had stolen the diamond from a Hindu statue while he was visiting India, and the stone was serving as one of its eyes. When the priest discovered that the stone was missing, he cursed the diamond. Everyone that would possess the diamond would befall misfortune. It is said that Jean felt very ill soon after he had stolen the diamond, and not long after his decease he died. But there are also reports that suggest that he lived until he was 84 years old. And I think that they speak truthfully when they say that Jean still lived. Because in other stories, Jean sold the diamond to none other than the Sun King of France, King Louis XIV. He bought the diamond in 1673 and turned it into a 69-carat diamond. The diamond would be known as the Blue Diamond of the Crown or French Blue. And after the king had purchased the diamond, he died of gangrene. And that's a disease where parts of your body turn black and start to die off, which truly sounds like a terrible curse. There are people who believe that Nicolas Fourcroy, a man who worked for the king, was allowed to wear the diamond for special occasions. But after he wore the diamonds, Nicolas fell out of favor with the king, which was of course a big deal. He was banished from France and he was sentenced to life imprisonment. And the story goes that Nicolas Fourcroy was the man in the iron mask. One of France's greatest mysteries that I will discuss in a future video. When the king died, his son Louis XV and his wife Marie Antoinette inherited the diamond. And if you are familiar with the history of France, you already know what will happen to the famous king and queen. And if you don't, well, their lives were short-lived. They were guillotined during the French Revolution. And Marie Antoinette's closest friend, Marie-Louise Princesse de Lamballe, wore the diamond as well, and she also died soon after. During the French Revolution, the diamond was stolen and they changed the shape of the diamond. And the funny thing is that it was stolen by a fellow countryman of mine. His name was Wilhelm Vals and he was a Dutch jeweler. And the funny thing is that Vals in Dutch means something like evil or mean. And it is believed that he is responsible for the shape that the diamond has this day. But after he changed the shape of the diamond, his life also started to change. His own son allegedly stole the diamond, murdered his father, and took his own life. Such a loving family. But why is it called the Hope Diamond? Well, in 1839, after many years of not knowing where the diamond was, it reappeared in the catalogue of a gem collection that was owned by a London banking family, and their name was Hope. A Greek merchant bought the diamond and he resold it in 1910 to none other than Pierre Cartier. The Greek merchant drove his car over a cliff not soon after that. But since we all know Pierre Cartier, I believe that he was spared this terrible fate. In 1912, Evelyn Walsh McLean bought the diamond. She was a rich heiress and she had bought the diamond from Pierre Cartier. Her misery started when her mother-in-law died, and not soon after that her 9-year-old son also died. And if that wasn't enough, her husband left her as well for another woman. And he also died in a psychiatric hospital. Her other child, a daughter, died of drug overdose. Evelyn owned the Washington Post, but due to debt, she was forced to sell the newspaper. One of her surviving children sold the diamond to a famous jeweler. That jeweler decided to donate the diamond to the Smithsonian Institute. It was sent via the mail and it seemed like the diamond was done cursing people. Unfortunately, the mailman who delivered the diamond to the institution had an accident in his truck and his house burned down. But where is the diamond now? It is still on display in the Smithsonian Nation Museum of Natural History. It is valued at around $250 million. It remains one of the most notorious diamonds and many visitors come to see it each day. But I'm sure that they don't dare to touch it if such a thing was even possible. It's probably behind glass. And I guess it's better that it stays there. We've arrived at the final subject of this video. And since we started with a doll, we will also end with a doll. One inspired the Conjuring universe, but this doll inspired another universe, the universe of Chucky. But this doll wasn't named Chucky, his name was Robert. It all started when a little boy named Eugene Robert Otto was given a handmade doll around 1904. This doll was one of a kind and specially designed for him. It was given to him by a servant who had worked for his parents in their home. Eugene decided to name his doll Robert, and he immediately loved his doll and even considered the doll his friend. The doll is around 40 inches tall and stuffed with wood wool. It's wearing a sailor suit and he holds a small toy dog with a creepy expression. Eugene lived on 434 Eaton Street in Key West, Florida. The home is now called the Artist House and it was built between 1819 and 1898. At first it seemed like Robert was just an ordinary doll, but it would not take long before Robert was involved in strange and terrifying events. It all started when Eugene was 10 years old and woke up in the middle of the night. He was looking for Robert, but somehow Robert was gone. He got scared when he noticed that Robert was sitting at the end of his bed, staring at him directly. On the other side of the house, his mother heard terrible screams for help. It was Eugene who was screaming the lungs out of his body. His mother rushed into his bedroom and was shocked to see that the whole bedroom was turned upside down. All the furniture in the room was overturned and Eugene was begging his mother to save him. He was curled up in fear on his bed and Robert was still sitting at the end of his bed staring at him. At first Eugene's parents thought nothing of it. Perhaps it was Eugene who had overturned his furniture in his room, or he had experienced some nightmares. But not long after this event, other strange events would occur. Eugene's parents would hear Eugene talking to his doll Robert, which is of course nothing out of the ordinary. But not only did Eugene talk to Robert, he also got a reply. And not an altered voice by a child to reply to themselves, but a completely different voice. Eventually they saw that Robert was speaking and they saw his facial expression change. If that wasn't crazy enough, they also saw Robert running up and down the stairs and staring outside their windows. Eugene's parents thought that Eugene was pranking them, but Eugene was convinced that Robert the doll was alive. When Eugene's parents died, Robert the doll stayed with him. He even kept Robert inside his house when he was living with his wife Anne. Anne did not like the presence of Robert. She felt uneasy, but she didn't know why. Eugene even had given Robert his own room, but Anne wanted him to move the doll to the attic. It would have been weird if Eugene had chosen the doll over his wife, so he decided to listen to her. But Robert the doll was furious. He was not happy with his new room. He started to make noises, giggle, and pacing over the wooden floor. There were even children from the neighborhood who claimed that Robert was watching them from the bedroom window and mocking them as they were walking towards school. And this of course confused Eugene because he had locked him inside the attic. So how was Robert able to go to the bedroom? He started to investigate, and when he opened the door of his bedroom, he came face to face with Robert. Robert was sitting in the rocking chair next to the window. Eugene locked Robert up once more in the attic, but Robert always found a way to escape. Robert stayed with Eugene for his entire life, and when Eugene died in 1974, a new owner moved inside the house. They had a little daughter, and one day she decided to go to the attic. And what did she find there? I guess you already know. She found Robert the doll. She was super thrilled that she had found the doll in the attic, but soon she wouldn't be so thrilled anymore. Robert started to terrorize her as well, the same way that he did with Eugene. But why did the doll come alive and why was he so evil? It is believed that the servant of the parents of Eugene wanted to get some revenge. She was badly mistreated by the family and she wanted to punish them in return. Therefore, she cursed the doll with voodoo and black magic. Although it's strange that the doll kept being evil after all the family members died. Why didn't he stop? Well, we will never know the answer to that. Robert resides in the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida. And visitors claim that when they try to capture Robert with their camera, that their camera starts to malfunction. Or that the pictures that they made of Robert the doll were blurry or even ruined. They say it's better to ask Robert for permission if you want to take a picture of him. Otherwise, Robert will give you bad luck. There are even people who write letters to the museum to apologize to Robert the doll. They claim that bad luck was following them after they visited Robert the doll and disrespected him. But Robert the doll isn't so forgiving. He is always waiting for new people to torment. There are of course many more cursed objects that I could discuss in a video, but then this video would be super long. Who knows, maybe one day I will make a part 2. So let me know which cursed object I missed and I can't leave out. What do all these cursed objects have in common? Well, even though I made the stories very mysterious and I kept you in the dark, I'm afraid I have to say that it is almost certain that all these objects that I have mentioned are not cursed. They are often born from myths, coincidences, and of course human imagination. Tragedies and misfortunes that are linked to these objects are usually the result of life events, political problems, and personal choices that are exaggerated into legends. It makes everything more exciting and mysterious. The myths will endure, and so will these objects, forever captivating the audiences. So even though they are not cursed, they still have a hold on our spirits. I really hope that you liked this video, and there are 2 more to come. I'm really also once again super excited for the next one, but this one is extra special to me because it is about an area that found its inspiration in Greek myths. And I love everything that has to do with something Greek. So I can't wait to tell you all about it. And if you haven't watched the other specials from this year from Halloween, or the older ones that are still very nice to watch, you can check the list that I put in the description. If you have any suggestions for new videos, you can also place them in the comments. And for now, I will see you next week. It's still strange to say that, but I love it. And share this with your friends if you like. And give a like if you liked it, of course. And I see you next week. Bye.